All right, so we're joined from the Windy City, Chicago, on the shores of Lake Michigan by the founder of Luxe Financials, Somalia Sadler, financial expert, accountant, just so many certifications. And we really thank you for taking some time for us today. This is our personal finance class. We got a room full here with us at Velma Jackson High School, and we're recording this for our friends at Madison Central, Ridgeland High School, and Germantown High School, and our YouTube channel. So thank you
Hi.
for taking some time out of your busy schedule for us today.
Yes, thank you for having me and thank you for inviting me today. Super excited to be able to talk with y'all.
Awesome. Now, before we get into the meat and potatoes of your day-to-day financial dealings and the things you see and practices you want to tell young people, take us a little bit through your educational background, because you did start out at Hampton University, HBCU there in Virginia, but then transferred and graduated from DePaul there in Chicago, and went from there. So, take us through your educational background.
Yes, so as you said, I started out at Hampton University. I was always a declared accounting major. So at Hampton, I really pretty much laid the groundwork for me as far as what things would be like when I got into the business world, so that when I did transfer over to DePaul my sophomore year, I was pretty much locked, loaded, and ready to go, and knew what to expect as far as securing those internships and really diving into the world of accounting. So got over to DePaul my sophomore year. I knew the importance of being active on campus, so I joined a sorority. I was a transfer student mentor while I was at DePaul. Really made sure that I made the most of my time there, especially with DePaul being considered a city school. I wanted to make sure, I still created that college experience for myself, on top of making sure I get those internships. So as a declared accounting major and a business student, pretty much the number one question is, what are you doing over the summer? Where are you interning? So I started out in my accounting career as an intern at Lou Malnati's, as an accounting intern, working under their controller while going to school full time. So pretty much while I wasn't learning in the classroom, taking pretty much what I did there and, started and built my career from it.
Awesome. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I've got a lot of seniors in here with me today. And one thing we really try to focus on is, no matter what path you take in college, whether it be community college, because Mississippi has a great community college program, whether you do HBCU, PWI, big school, small school, it doesn't matter. The academic aspect, obviously, you have to focus on, because that's why you're there, and that's what keeps your scholarships. But the networking aspect, in my opinion, is just as important, not only from the intern aspect, but practicing the soft skills. These kids want to, and I can speak for every teacher that's going to see this later, these kids want to act like we are pulling teeth to have them do a presentation for just a few minutes, when in reality, it's not to be mean or, to make it too challenging, but those face-to-face customer skills, those face-to-face interview skills, face-to-face sales, face-to-face transactions are invaluable when it comes to being a solid professional. When as you progress through college, they're going to see the grades, but then when they meet you, they're going to see who interviews better.
Yes, like the number one thing, especially when you are on that job search, they want to see what's on the paper, but they also want to see who you are off the paper. So for me, I like to look at every opportunity as a learning opportunity. So I like to say my first marketing campaign was when I was in high school. I ran for our class treasurer my senior year. I won class treasurer. And that was really like the entry point into me seeing, okay, what is this accounting stuff? What is that even about? What is it like? But even just me putting myself out there, having to market, having to build a campaign from scratch as a high school, as a high school student, and really helped me when I got into college, being able to not only join a sorority, but hold leadership positions in my sorority. I was a financial secretary and a vice president. And again, not just working with other students, but then when you get to the collegiate level, being able to work with other companies, other entities, like being able to work with DePaul University staff as a 19-year-old student, and even with me getting my internship. So like me taking all of those presentations and, having to speak up and just having to present, I like to just pretty much get it out of the way. But those things have helped me so much throughout my career that please do not underestimate it at all.
Yeah,
We'll use it in the future.
yeah, it's the most lost skill in America. And I think that's it's not a specific to anybody in here. That's a generational thing. It's really something we've gotten away from that I think people need to focus more on. But that's a whole different conversation. Now, you talk about, as you started Lux Financials, you really saw a need for financial education with underserved communities, with rural communities, with minority communities, because look, and I'll be the first person to agree with you. It's not that people in those communities are stupid. It's not that they don't care or don't know. They just were never taught. And, this is a very hardworking community here in Camden. A lot of great people that work so hard, but that only takes you so far. If you don't start building wealth for yourself in high school or in college when you start working, you're going to create 12, 15 more years of work and that much more debt for yourself. So talk about how, you really saw that need and have moved into that.
So for me, I started Lux Financials when I was 28. So I'm 30 now. And I come from financial services background with my last position being at a bank that offered wealth management services. And even just as a young, employee and an accountant associate there starting out, again, me coming from the accounting background, me being here where the money is, as an employee there, I tried to go about, starting building wealth. At the time, I was about 23. And I remember planning meetings with like wealth management associates there, and they're looking at me. I come in, they're looking like, are you supposed to, like, you're kind of young, you're kind of starting early. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm an accountant. So I know the importance of starting early. And what caused me to see the need for it was that experience of me being at a bank, working under and in wealth management industry, and then seeing that they didn't actually have any services available for me. Now here I am, an accountant working for you all, and there's nothing available for me. Like, I was like, that's kind of odd, that's kind of weird. So for me, taking a look at the industry overall, just not at the place where I was working, but just looking at the industry overall and seeing there's a whole sector of people being left out of these services, out of the conversations about these services, simply because of access to capital and access to wealth. And like you stated, I know that it's not a situation of, well, we don't want to know. We do want to know. We just need the information and need somebody to guide us there. So when I built Lux Financials, I made it a point to stand true to something that I told myself in college as a student at DePaul learning accounting, saying that, I don't know how I was going to do it at the time. I'm like, I need to get this information to my community. Like, this is information that we should all have. And at the age of 19 as a student, it was the first time that I was hearing it. So when I got to the point of being like, okay, I'm going to start Lux Financials, I'm like, okay, let's stay true to what we said. And then also, how can we go about doing this and getting this information out there?
Yeah, and that's so important because, like I said, I've got a lot of seniors here and a couple of sophomores and juniors, and I understand when you're 16, 17, 18 years old, this stuff really isn't on your radar. I was the same way when I was in high school. But this is something that as you grow older, and especially if you're going straight to the workforce, that you have to start planning now. We have a lot of great manufacturing jobs here in this area of Mississippi, a lot of great trade programs. So even if you're not doing the whole 4-year college thing, this can still be vital for you. And I always say, and I know they get sick of me saying this, but I'm not even a financial expert. And there's a few things I could tell you that you'd be shocked people don't know. Because, when you're 16 years old, you're just worried about how big the paycheck is and what you can ball out with that weekend. And I get it. I've been there. But as you grow older, and my grandparents, and I'm sure your grandparents, there was a time in our history where you could just say, oh, I'm going to get Social Security and I don't have to worry about it. But those days have long gone. When it comes to even just basic things, if you have a company where they will match up to a certain amount on a retirement, even if it's 5% or a dollar amount. If you don't put in that amount every month, you're cheating yourself, not only out of years of work, but out of thousands and thousands of dollars. And honestly, you don't even miss that on your paycheck. And then on top of, there's deferred compensation where you can just put in $50 a month. And before you know it, it's a few thousand after you've worked for 10, 15 years. So talk about some other, basic things that you see people coming out of high school and in your community that they just don't know.
Well, to speak to that last point that you just made about, finding a company who will match your 401k. I was a person again who took advantage of that, even at the age of 23 when me just starting out. Now, obviously at 23, I didn't have any kids or didn't have too many major expenses, but I knew how important it would be for me to start saving for retirement then, so that later on it wouldn't be an instance of I'm trying to get ready. So for me, I know that was definitely one of the things that I leveraged and was able to use that capital to help me start and fund my own business in the future. And then the high school students of today, like you all are in a unique position where things are not the same, even from when I was a high school student. You all truly have to create a path for yourselves. The path that was laid out previously, it'll be there, it'll always be there, but it is really going to be up to you all to take the initiative to figure out what it is that you want to do and how you're going to generate wealth for your families. I know for me personally, I knew I was going to be where the money was. I knew I wanted to be wealthy. I knew I wanted to be able to have and build a type of wealth where my kids didn't have to, they had the option to decide what they wanted to do, and they could comfortably make that decision knowing that I already had taken care of things. So because of that, that's how I found my way to accounting and down that accounting pathway. But then even getting into my career and realizing that you still have to step up. Like you can't sit back and wait for things to just pan out or wait for things to fall into your lap. Like I still had to get out here and create and make a way for myself. And even in forming a business and deciding to start a business, I assessed the different paths that I had to choose from, and decided on which path that would one lead me to the most money, because that's why we're here, for business.
Yeah.
And then also just allow me to make the most impact, really.
Yeah, and it just drives me crazy because I know social media has such a huge impact on today's youth, or actually on society as a whole. But you see these memes like, well, they need to lower the retirement age to 35. And I'm like, it has nothing to do with an age. It has to do with a dollar amount. You know, you can not have a college degree, work a blue collar job for 30 years, but if you saved up enough money, you could retire at 50, depending on how you've managed that. It has nothing to do with how old you are. Now, you can't get the Social Security till you're 65, but if you've saved enough for retirement, by all means, you have the ability to retire.
Yes, and truly work towards building a life where you're not waiting on Social Security. Honestly, again, that whole idea of, well, I'm going to wait until I'm handed something to me, when you could just get out here and go and get it. I know for me, again, with starting my company, yeah, I could have waited, until somebody decided that they were going to hand me something, but I knew what I was capable of right then and there at the moment of being 27, 26 when I had started planning things out and, determining how and what route I wanted my life to take. And I knew what I was capable of. And I said, well, why sit, and wait and pretty much hold myself back when I can just go for it now, when I could put in the work that I know I'm capable of doing to yield the results that I want to see.
Absolutely. Now I do want to talk about Lux Financials because you talked about you've seen small businesses, especially Black-owned businesses, that again they may have a great concept, they may have great customer service skills, great marketing, but they don't understand the financial aspect because a lot of people that aren't educated on certain financial issues, they're gonna. You said you had one company that had $12,000 of unnecessary expenses. So I hear a lot of kids say, "I want to start my own business, be my own boss." And you even hear, and I'm a huge fan, but Jasmine Sullivan with her song, I'm gonna move to Atlanta, start a business and be rich. It's not just flipping a magic switch.
Right.
Now it's possible, but the financial side of it isn't so much the fun side. And even on the personal side, it's not always the fun stuff, but it's important. So what type of mistakes are you seeing small business owners make? Because we have a couple that are already dabbling in their own business. And when you're not at least maybe even you don't necessarily have to hire somebody right away, but if you're not paying attention to the financial side, what kind of traps you seeing folks fall into?
Ooh, so first things first, you have to take care of home first. There's no way that you're going to be able to successfully build a company financially if your personal finances aren't being taken care of. So that's number one. Like, I don't care if it's a budget, whatever it is, you have to take care of home first. A lot of traps that I'm seeing though from small business owners are just simply there's a range of things. I would like to say ignoring their financial position altogether. Cutting corners, I see that a lot. And by cutting corners, I mean, choosing to invest in everything but the finances. When you have a business, the way that you're going to build that business successfully is through investing. And the first thing you have to invest in is the actual operations and the money of the business. That's a place where I see people like to skip out on that part a lot. And you'll see it through like cash flow forecasting, through budgeting. Like these are the things that are still required of you. Sorry, the dog is barking really quickly, but these are things that are still required of you. And I see a lot of small business owners falling into the trap of just simply ignoring it altogether. Another thing is not being organized. Organization is going to be like the foundation to building your company. Again, that's financial organization, that's systems, that's literally every aspect of your business. And I started out as a solopreneur, but I came in with an interesting point as an accountant because I knew the different pieces that would, be needed to build that financial piece. And the thing about finances, I like to tell clients, especially, is like, I know it's scary. I know it is very scary, especially when you're not looking at it. But if you turn around, look at it, give it some attention, give it some love, give it some care, guess what? It's no longer scary because you know every single thing that's going on in there. And as accountants, they like to think, we're these magicians and we have a magic wand that we're waving, but all we're really doing is actually combing through the numbers with a fine-tooth comb, and pulling out the problems and saying, here are the areas of opportunity, here are the areas for growth. So that's what I would say is the main thing I'm noticing with small business owners.
Yeah, and it's just, again, it's not the glamorous or fun part. Everybody wants to just jump on Instagram and start,
Yeah.
start modeling and everything. And all that's fun. I mean, if you're able to do that and make money, by all means, you need to do it. But if you don't pay attention to the financial side, whether it be with your personal life or with your business, it's a recipe for disaster.
Yes, you should be able to tell me how much equity you have in your company. If you cannot say to anybody how much equity you have in the company, are you really owning the company? Or if you
That's
are,
a,
what have you been doing this for? Because it should be for
that's a
the
great
equity,
point.
which is where the real money is.
That's a great point. Now, before I get to the students' questions, there is one thing I did want to talk about, and I ask every guest the same question here that has this type of combo, because I know you didn't graduate from Hampton, but you did attend Hampton, and then you went to DePaul, which is again a huge school, it's private Catholic school right there in Chicago. But HBCUs and PWIs offer different things. Both of them have things the other one cannot. And we have several HBCUs here in Mississippi, both public and private, large and small, and also the major state universities as well. So talk about what each one has to offer, because both of them are great schools that offer different things.
I would say, so starting with Hampton, again, my freshman year, I did my freshman year at Hampton University. When selecting a school, I always knew that I wanted to go to an HBCU. Ended up at DePaul. We'll get there in a minute. But I will say Hampton, although I only spent a year there, the wealth of information that I received there as not just a student, but as a Black student, and a student also as a woman entering into the business world was truly priceless. Like so I started out our conversation saying that Hampton really laid that foundation for me of, here is what Somalia will be as a businesswoman. I received that information at Hampton. And so I can say and speak to the fact that at HBCUs, they really do focus on building you as a person. Again, if it was not for Hampton, I wouldn't have known how to dress for job interviews, or I wouldn't have even owned a suit. It was a requirement as an incoming business
Wow.
freshman that we had to have suits, because by the time you got into your major studies, I was going to have to wear a suit to class, to all of my business classes. So I wouldn't have even owned a suit. I wouldn't have known how to dress. I wouldn't have had opportunities to interview for Big Four accounting firms or to be selected as a part of the Inroads program my freshman year. And even just being able to just excel as a student and really giving me that confidence to stand in who I am, not only just as a student, not only as a future accountant, but just as a Black woman altogether. And then what I can say I got from DePaul was the experience of that business world. So Chicago is a big major city, one of the big major financial cities. And I went to school at DePaul. My classes were downtown, so I was right in the thick of things. At the same time, again, having internships where they were also downtown. So I'm going over as a student, studying either a night class or during the day. And if I wasn't there, I would be over at my walking down the street to my internships, again, also downtown. So DePaul really, and coming to DePaul really gave me that drive that I needed to be successful in the business world and be successful as an accountant. Again, like I said, I had DePaul is a city school. So a bit different from what you all experienced down there, where I'm one student here amongst like 3 or 4 other different universities, workers, like all type of people, tourists, like people from all different walks of life. So when I say I really had to go about creating that college experience, I still wanted to make sure I had a college experience, although I left the HBCU where it was more close knit and they really focused on community. I knew I was going to have to build that at DePaul. So making sure I was active on campus, joining different organizations, and then again, getting that business and that accounting experience that I knew I needed to be able to also successfully build my career. So Hampton laid the foundation for me, and DePaul pretty much kicked things into high gear and gave me that drive that I needed to get out here in the business world and really be able to confidently sit at the table, no matter what table I was at, and be able to not only state who I was, but state the value that I bring to each and every single room that I enter into.
Yeah, and it is pretty cool. You're able to just get off the L train and you're right there at DePaul. It is, we don't have that kind of stuff down here. But yeah,
Yes,
if you're not from Chicago or never been to Chicago, it really is overwhelming. The
yes.
amount of activity going on right there in that university center. But I do have some questions from the students, and I'll get to as many of these as I can. And some of these are really good. So this is DeKayla Williamson. She's a sophomore, one of our cheerleaders here at Velma Jackson. And she asked, how did you know you wanted to major in finance before you went to college?
Okay, so I've always been great at math. And when my mom was presenting different college routes for me, the first thing that she made a point to tell me was that I need to look into something that's going to give her a return on her investment. She made it very clear to me that she would not be investing in something that would not, again, be getting a return essentially. And so me being strong at math, I looked at the accounting profession. Again, when I told you I ran my first marketing campaign, when I ran for our class treasurer, that was really my first entry point into what the world of an accountant would be. And I remember doing that and having the experience as our senior class treasurer, and enjoying it. Like I was responsible for, the planning of our prom, our senior activities. And I remember planning it and the feeling that I got, just not only being able to be a part of that, but then also being able to look out for our classmates and, getting their input and them saying, oh, this is what we want. And me being responsible for making that happen, so that when it was time for me to actually choose for college, again, stuck to like, what is it that you're good at? What are your strong points? And I, again, also enjoy helping people. And as an accountant, we get to help people every single day with their finances. So that is how I got my start.
And let me tell you, there's so many fields that have kind of an expiration date. Finance jobs are not going away.
Yes,
It's one of the very few recession proof and pandemic proof careers.
yes.
Finance people are the very last people laid off on downsizing. So I think that's a major factor of, well, if you are looking for job security,
Yes.
financial services is a great field to get into. This is Kentravian Young. He's a senior, one of our football players, a member of our state championship track team here at Velma Jackson. And he asked, what was your biggest motivation to become an entrepreneur?
My biggest motivation to become an entrepreneur was my family. Again, I knew I wanted to build generational wealth, and I knew I wanted my kids to be able to have the option to choose what they wanted to do in life. And I knew that in order for me to be able to give that to them, I had to step out on faith in the present day and choose that for myself first. So that was the main thing that inspired me to become an entrepreneur. Again, also the opportunity. Over here, there are no limits. Like there's only a limit if I create it or if I look at it as if there is one. And in my former life, I like to call it my former life when I was an employee, there were limits. Like there was always somebody capping me off. And again, I'm the accountant, I do the numbers. When I looked at the numbers of this life of limits and the life of no limits, the numbers didn't compare. And so
There you
again,
go.
I stepped out on faith and was like, well, I'm gonna take my chances over here where there are no limits, because again, I can try and fail and try and fail. Again, I'm just going to keep going up versus here. I'm going to constantly be capped and cut off at the knees. And I personally didn't like that.
Hey, that's a great reason. This is Gabriel G. He's a senior member of our football and baseball team here at Velma Jackson. And he asked, what are the biggest pros and cons when it comes to accounting?
Ooh, now there are a lot of cons. There are a lot of cons and there are a lot of pros. The pros I would say is that accounting is a skill that any and every single person who is walking this earth should have. They truly should
Absolutely.
call and consider accounting life 101. Because if you are a person who plans on making money in any way, shape, or form, you will be dealing with accounting, whether you like it or not. So the pros are that it's a skill that you can use literally if you want to do anything and everything. It also allows you to be able to help people again and do right by people and really truly show people how to build wealth, which for me is truly inspiring, being able to help in that way. The cons are that it is very hard. Not even going to lie to you, it is very hard work. But when you are able to find something to relate it back to in your personal life, it makes it that much easier. And that's truly one of the things that kept me in accounting during school, through all the tiers and the tests and the tax classes and everything else. That's the one thing that kept me going, was just me being able to find something that I could relate it back to in real life.
That's awesome. All right, I got time for one more. This is Alexander Williams, also a senior. And he asked, being an entrepreneur, how do you deal with fear and doubt when you face a new challenge?
Ooh, now I will say fear and doubt definitely is something that comes up. For me, I went about changing my habits. Again, it wasn't the fact that fear and doubt would never come up. It became, what are you going to do when it does come up? So for me, I like to meditate. I like to journal. I recently became vegan and started changing, the way I was eating, the way I was living overall, because I knew that, again, fear and doubt would be something that comes up, but I wanted to be sharper and more on point when it does come up. So that now I'm at a point that when it does come up, I'm able to take a step back, breathe. I also went to therapy that helped. Take a step back, breathe, and really assess the situation and determine where is the fear even coming from, really working on getting to the root of the problem. So again, it is something that will come up. Again, especially the doubt and you being out in the field with everybody else. But if you can tap into yourself and the power that you hold within yourself, it'll make it that much easier for you to not only just deal with, but overcome when it does come up.
Absolutely. Well, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for taking some time for us today. But before we
Thank
go, you said yourself you face barriers of growth in your career, barriers of growth in your field, and also on top of that, this is something everybody needs to know. Like I've said a million times, understand in high school you think this is never going to apply to you, it's not important, but you're gonna. It's bad enough you have to face obstacles as a young black kid, no matter where you are. I mean, and I don't care what. I mean, everybody's got to face obstacles. The world. And you said yourself, nobody owes you anything. The world doesn't owe you anything. You have to figure it out. There's people that help you along the way, but you got to overcome those obstacles. So these kids are going to face those same obstacles you faced, but yet you've gotten multiple degrees, running your own business there in one of the largest cities in the world. So it can be done. So, first of all, why is financial education important, and how can these kids overcome those obstacles?
Financial education is important because it will follow you the rest of your life. Not only follow you, but it will follow every single generation that comes after you. What you want to do is make sure you create opportunities not only for yourself, but for your family and the generations that'll come after you, so that they can have a leg up and they can have a chance. What was the second question?
How can they overcome the obstacles that they're going to face, similar to the ones you did?
In order to overcome the obstacles, face them head on. Like, again, they're going to come up. They're not going to stop coming up. But facing them fearlessly, again, by grounding yourself, really knowing and tapping into who you are. That I would say is the number one thing that you could do for yourself to face those obstacles. If I didn't change the way I live, again, changing my eating habits, noticing and recognizing how the food I was eating was really playing a part in my ability to even be able to deal with and manage the things that I was facing and coming up against. Meditating, journaling. If I didn't do those things, and again, those things, they are that, but what they truly are at the root of them is me tapping into myself, me tapping into Somalia, me tapping into the power that Somalia holds as a person, as a woman, as a Black person, just as a human being overall. Me being able to tap into that allows me to look at whatever it is in front of me and hurdle over it each and every single time. Yeah, there may be fear that pops up, there may be doubt, but it's either this thing is going to come through me or I'm going to come through it. And it's not coming through me. I'm going through it and I'm going over it. And so again, truly just tapping into yourself. If that's the number one thing I could leave you with, tap into yourself, because when you do, nobody can stand in your way or tell you anything different.
Absolutely. Now, before we go, tell us, luxefinancials.com.
Yes, luxefinancials.com is where you can find us. We can also be found on Instagram at lux.financials. That's Lux with an E, financials with an S. And you can find me on Instagram at IM Somalia, spelled like the country. Also, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. If you are not on LinkedIn, yes, even as a high school student, when you get to college, you should definitely be on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn also as Somalia Sadler, and Sadler with 1D.
Love it. Well, thanks so much for taking some time for us today, Somalia Sadler, all the way from Chicago, Illinois. We thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you all for having me. Enjoy the rest of your day and week.
All right. Talk to you soon, buddy.
Bye-bye.
See ya.